everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my July wrap up. July was a pretty good reading month. I read 31 books in July, 10,451 pages. My average rating was a 3.69. I had a 5-star, a lot of very high 4 stars, and then a 1 star, and a couple of 2s and 2.5s, which is normal. So we take those. We take a 5 and a 1. My average book length was 305 pages. My average time to finish was 4 days. I read 87% fiction and 13% nonfiction, so we're keeping that above 10%, as is my goal. And surprisingly, this month, fantasy was not my top genre. My top genre was LGBTQIA+, followed by fantasy, and then literary, and then sci-fi, and then speculative fiction. But I don't really count that as like fantasy being dethroned, because as you can see, the way that Storygraph works, the way that they categorize their genres is like you can be tagged with multiple genres. Like a book can be tagged as sci-fi and speculative fiction and LGBT, and those are all considered its genre. So I'm sure that I was reading a lot of LGBT fantasy and then I just read slightly more LGBT books. So that's probably where that number comes from. And then I read 74% print and 26% digital. I bought a couple books digitally so that I could read the Ursula K. Le Guin Prize for Fiction shortlist. They were the 2 that my library didn't have in the system, and like I want to support these authors, and they are from small presses, so I wanted to support them and buy the books from them. So there were those, and that's probably why I was reading a little bit more of my Kobo this month. Yeah, so we can get right into it. I think that overall I have been pleasantly surprised with how much I'm still able to read, even with like a full-time job, going to work for 8 hours a day. I do, however, find myself, I think, picking up shorter books and books that maybe seem a little bit easier to get through. I think part of the problem is that I'm, trying to conserve my energy, and like there are a couple books that are really long and complicated and that I'm really interested in reading and devoting my time to, but it just takes so long to get through them because I want to sit down and like I'm a marathon reader, not a sprinter. So like I like to sit down and read for like hours at a time. I would sit down and read like a 300-page book in one sitting if I had like 3 hours to do so. So it's hard for me to like have to read in like little fits and spurts throughout the day, like on breaks or at night right before I go to bed and do all the other stuff that I'm supposed to be doing. So I have found myself reaching less for like the big chunky fantasy books that I love and more for like shorter fantasy standalones, like, maybe some other stuff, fantasy romance, sci-fi romance, stuff like that, just like stuff that seems shorter and more manageable. So there is that. Now that I'm aware of that, I would like to stop doing that. I would like to commit to reading like longer and more complicated books, even if that means I'm reading less books a month. Like I think part of it is probably a vanity thing. Like I like seeing that number be high, and like that's not the way to go, right? Like it's all about what you're reading and not how many books you're reading and how you're engaging with those books, and not, being able to read over a certain amount of books per month. So I'm gonna try to let go of that now that I'm aware that's what I'm doing. Also, some exciting news, some like housekeeping news. I just saw on NetGalley that next year, for the 10th anniversary of 9 Fox Gambit, I can't believe it's been 10 years since this book came out, but they're doing like a special 10th anniversary edition. I saw it up on NetGalley, and I was so excited about it. I don't love the cover. I just think these are so charming and weird and like really, really fit what the book is about, and the new covers are like very minimalist. The new cover is like very minimalistic, but like I'm still gonna buy it. It's probably a hardback, so like it would be nice to have a hardback 9 Fox Gambit on my shelf, and I love this series. I love this book in particular. I want to give you and Holly money, so I'll probably get that when it comes out. Okay, so let's now get down to the actual books I read and the ones I want to talk about. Side note, I will not be talking about the books I read that are part of the Ursula K. Le Guin Prize for Fiction shortlist, because I'm going to do a whole dedicated video reviewing those books, ranking those books, talking about them. So I just think it would be a little bit redundant for me to talk about them in this video as well. I did read most of the nominees this month, the ones that I hadn't read at least. I have 2 more to go. I'm in the middle of one, and then I have 1 more left to go, and that is going to be all of them, and then I can make that video. So stay tuned for that, probably sometime this month. We're gonna hope. We're gonna put our fingers together and we're gonna try to make that happen. First, I think I'm gonna talk about Stormfront by Jim Butcher. This is a book I picked up at a used bookstore for like $5, like a year ago probably at this point. And I took this up to the cash register, and the cashier, who was a woman, warned me. She was like, yeah, it's a great book, it's a great series, but like, just warning you, the women in it aren't written very well. So it's like, thank you, noted. I will write that down. I will put that in the back of my head, and I did. And that is true. I'm glad I went in warned, because I think it helped me enjoy this book, like in a way that maybe I would have been too annoyed to otherwise. Like the misogyny isn't egregious in this. I want to be clear. Like I've definitely read worse, and I've read way worse. And the narrative does in a certain way present the main character Harry Dresden as like textually a misogynist. He is textually chauvinistic towards his female coworkers in a way that he is punished for by the end of the book. If he had just told her what was going on, like none of the stuff at the end of the book would have happened. It wouldn't have gotten to the point that it did. And he recognizes that, and he's even like, damn, I shouldn't have infantilized this grown woman with a job because I think women are fragile and can't handle it. But this misogyny is sort of supposed to be lovable. It's supposed to be like, oh, he just loves women so much he wants to protect them, and sort of doesn't acknowledge that that is also like being misogynistic and is still seeing women as like extensions of you and as like a delicate, fragile creature that you need to protect, as opposed to like people with capabilities and jobs and emotions that don't revolve around you and don't depend on you. So there's definitely that aspect. Again, glad I went into it warned. It was about what I expected. Are the female characters greatly written, with the exception of maybe Murphy? No. But is it the worst thing I've ever read? Also no. But as a book, setting that aside, as a plot, I thought this was very interesting as like urban fantasy mystery fiction. The way that the magic is incorporated into this world was very interesting. It's like this very mixed bag of like how people are aware of that magic is real and how many people like don't seem to be aware that it's a thing at all, and like the sort of rules around it were very interesting. So that was an aspect of this book that I enjoyed. I think I would read more books in this series, just like I'm not obsessed with it. I'm not gonna read them all, go out and like read them all right away, but like, I could definitely see myself being bored one month being like, what's Harry Dresden up to? Let me go read the second one. So I'm definitely not gonna keep this, but I had a good time with it. It was better than I expected, but maybe worse than I hoped it would be. I also, again, like I said, not going to talk about this one because this is Call and Response by Christopher Caldwell, which is nominated for the Ursula K. Le Guin Award, and I'm going to talk about it in its own video, but I just wanted to show it off because I think this is a really stunningly pretty edition. Like, normally I don't really like a sprayed edge on a paperback, but I do actually really like the way this looks. It reminds me of cotton candy, and I want to shout out Neon Hemlock, the Goat's Neon Hemlock, because it's a very well-made, well-designed, high quality book, especially for the price you're getting it for. So I really highly recommend buying this from Neon Hemlock if you are interested in this book. And then I also want to talk about Minor Black Figures by Brandon Taylor. I picked this up at an independent bookstore because it was actually on sale. They had this like sale card of like hardbacks that were discounted. So I got this for $16 when normally it is $29, so that's pretty good. And I had no idea that he even had a new book out at the point I saw this. I think it came out quite a while ago, even like earlier this year. It's coming out in 2025. So I'm so completely late on this, and I have read all of Brandon Taylor's other books and have really enjoyed them. But there's always felt like there's just been something missing. I think in my reviews for his other books, I've said that it just feels often like his books end on an arbitrary note. Like you get to the middle of a character arc and then the book just ends. Or like you get to some sort of arbitrary point and it still feels like there's so much to explore with these characters and what they're going through, and then the book's over. And you're like, okay, I wanted more. I think it's a good sign that like I always am just left wanting more, because I think the characters and the situations he comes up with are so interesting and so complicated, and he does such a good job of dealing with them that I'm like, but where's the rest of it? And so with this one, I was really pleasantly surprised by how I did feel like he had kind of beaten that urge, and that like this did feel complete in a way that his other works did not. It's about a Black artist living and working in New York City and how he gets sort of entangled with this former priest, this white man who's a former priest, and they like sort of are navigating that new attraction to each other. And then he is also dealing with thinking about art and about his place in art and the place of Black people in general in art, especially in such a very like classical art, which is such like a white European space, and his mentorship with the gallery he works for and the art preservation people that he works for, and just it's this very slice of lifey realistic portrait of Black gay life in New York City, and I really enjoyed it. And it was just very Brandon Taylor. Like if you don't like his other books, you're not gonna like this, but again, if you like him, I think you will like this, and you will feel very satisfied with the character arc. Like again, from the first time I felt like this character had actually like grown and changed and come to a conclusion of a place that I was really satisfied with. So really enjoyed this one, and I'm glad it was $16. Then let's talk about my 1 and 5 stars. We'll start with the 1 because it's a 1 in the sense that like I just can't believe that anybody sat down and wrote this, not in the sense that like I personally hated it so much, you know? I read Motor City Love Song by Lisa Peers. Is that her name? Yes, Lisa Peers. Because me and my friend like to go to Barnes & Noble and each pick out a book and then read that book and then swap books and read each other's book. It's the thing we like to do. This was one of the books I got for that. It's something else like that I normally wouldn't read. I don't normally read like, I don't read a lot of like romance or like contemporary fiction or like historical romance, which this kind of is. It's like in the 90s like grunge scene in Detroit. And it's kind of a Daisy Jones and Six with Lesbians, where there's this star who randomly blows up and she and her manager are in a relationship, and then one day at like the height of her fame she just totally vanishes. She cuts all contact. Her manager Jace, her girlfriend, has no idea what happened to her or where she went, and then like 20 years later Jace manages to track her down and reach out to her to try to get her to perform at this benefit for this club that they both like came of age at. And it's about them reuniting and figuring out why she left in the first place and how their relationship was sort of not very good actually in the 90s and how they're in a better place now and ready to move forward. So fun idea, great idea. Unfortunately, just some not very good undertones to this one. So Jace, the manager, is lesbian. Paloma, the heartthrob singer, is bisexual. She cheats on her lesbian girlfriend with a man because she wants to be pregnant and have a baby. And that's just like a level of bisexual stereotyping that I am not okay with. And I am not of the opinion that you can never have like things that may fall into stereotypes in a book. Like I actually do love a promiscuous bisexual cheater. Okay, sue me. I do love a promiscuous bisexual cheater. But I love it when like they're cheating on their current partner with the love interest. You know, I like it when the feelings are so strong and the connection is so immediate and just all consuming that they like, you know, they can't even break up with this person they're with before being with their true person. So like I didn't like that in this book she cheated on who was supposed to be like her true love that she got back together with at the end of the book. She cheated on her with like a random man solely because she wanted to have a baby. And we don't even really see, the problem really with this book is that we don't see any of the romance actually happen and develop on page. We start the book being told that these girls are already in a relationship. And then when we get to the part where it's revealed that she cheated on her and had a baby with this man, we also don't see them like fall in love and see her be swayed into cheating on her girlfriend and see why she would do that and what she's getting from him that she can't get out of Jace. It's just like completely off page, and then we're told about it happening when we come back to that part in the timeline. So that was just really bizarre and made it really hard to actually be invested in and care about these romances, either of them, that were happening. And because we are in Paloma the cheater's perspective during that portion of the book, we never even learn how Jace responded to that knowledge. Like, how does she feel betrayed? Is it worse for her that it's with a man? Like, can she get over that? Like, is that going to be a really big problem for her? We don't see any of how she responds to that. Probably because if we did, it would make us feel incredibly bad about the fact that they're supposed to end the book together. Because like that is such a crazy thing to do with your partner that you want to be with for the rest of your life. She just comes back in a couple chapters later and is like, I've decided off page that I'm cool with it. Okay, great. So this was just, yeah, I really didn't like that. For a romance book and for a book that wanted to be about all these complicated relationships, it just did not seem prepared to actually develop and handle any of those things. And then also as a book about like punk rocker girl culture in the 90s, like I can't say that the author wasn't realistic and didn't do a lot of research or isn't passionate about that, but I did feel like in other areas the realism just wasn't there. Like these punk rock ladies in the 90s, when they're furnishing their first apartment, are like going to Target and buying fairy lights for their apartment. Like, it's just, would they really do that? Was there even a Target in Detroit in the 1990s? Like, that just doesn't seem very realistic, but I'm not a Detroit expert, so maybe there was. And maybe all of the rocker girl ladies were shopping at Target in the 90s. So that was really bad. I don't recommend it. But my 5-star, which is Dahlgren by Samuel Delaney, I don't also know if I would recommend this one either. I don't think I would recommend this one to very many people, even though I loved it. This is so up my alley, and it's so Samuel Delaney that like it reminds me a lot of Always Coming Home by Ursula K. Le Guin, where it's like I would not recommend starting with this one if you have never read this author before. I would really recommend reading his Nevarian series first. I don't remember what the first book is called, but it's called Nevarion, and it's like a sword and sorcery high fantasy series set in like pre-history times with a dash of fantasy, and it's all about the transition from a barter economy to a money economy and all these signs and signifiers, and it just really primes you for like what Samuel Delaney writes like and what kind of themes he is interested in engaging with and how his stories function. He's very much like, he writes all these puzzles and all of these paradoxes into his books, and they're not meaningless, and they do clearly have like answers to them within the book, but you're never really told that. Like there's never a big aha moment at the end where everything is like explained to you and everything clicks into place. It's really more like you're just presented with all this information. You have to really dig for it and figure out what is going on yourself, and you may never get a confirmation on if the thing you were perceiving is happening is right or not. So I enjoy that. I can see why other people would find that really annoying, and it's certainly not a style for everyone, which is why I want to warn people going into this. So what is Dahlgren actually about? It is the story of this city, Bologna, which has had this unexplained thing happen to it that sort of cut it off from the rest of the world and made it like this very odd survival economy place. Everyone else in America like knows what has happened to this city and knows that like if you go there, like you're going into like a very dangerous situation, but seemingly very little information about Bologna reaches the outside world and vice versa. So it's about this main character, the kid, who at the beginning of the story does not remember his name, and he doesn't remember a lot about his past, and he just comes to entering the city of Bologna and is given like this fantastical weapon by these girls who are leaving the city, and he's given like a string of beads around his neck, and those things become very important for the rest of the book, but again, you never really learn what the hell they're actually for. So it's about him entering into the city, becoming part of life in the city, learning about what it's like to live in this city, and interspersed there are these little hints of like weird things happening. The sun seems to go supernova. There's 2 moons. Places will be on fire and then they'll go by the next day and nothing will have changed, or vice versa. A place will be fine one day, then they'll go by the next day and it'll be completely destroyed. So just it's all this little strange stuff happening in the background, but the book is not like a sci-fi adventure thriller like learning what happened to this city and explaining how it got the way it is and how they're gonna fix it. That's just not what this book is, and I love that. But again, know what you're getting into when you get into this book. This is like the Ulysses of speculative fiction, or probably like more accurately like the Finnegan's Wake of speculative fiction, because it is very much, it starts in the middle of a sentence and it loops back around on itself. The full sentence, it starts with to wound the autumnal city, and it ends with I have come to. So together the book's like the framework that wraps the book is I have come to wound the autumnal city, which banger line. I love that. And so that's just kind of the prose that this book is written in, and it's written in a very stylistic, experimental sense. It's broken it up into a couple of sections, and some of the sections have like very strange prose structures. The last portion of the book is called the Anathemata, a plague journal, and so there are sections. It's intextually the notebook that the main character discovers at the beginning of the book, where like somebody has already written in the notebook and he's writing on like the bits of the notebook that they haven't written yet. So like you're seeing both his interjections and also the other like notes that were on the page. So that's really cool. I find that really fun. I find that really engaging, and it's such a long book. It's almost 800 pages, I think maybe exactly 800 pages. Yeah, it's 799 pages, but I was just so enthralled at every moment. Like, it's just such a rich portrait of what life is like, especially life in cities. It's much less, again, a sci-fi puzzle box, and much more just like an allegory, a portrait of gay interracial life in New York City in the 80s. Like, it was just so interesting. There's so many characters that feels so real, and so many dynamics between characters that feel so real. It tackles so many subjects in a very progressive way: sex, sexuality, race relations in major cities. Like, and Samuel Delany is like one of the few male fantasy speculative lit authors that I just think is so good at writing women. Like, he just gets women and he writes them so well and so sympathetically and so in such a complicated way that I just really trust him when it comes to writing women into his stories. There's also a throuple in this, which I didn't even know when I picked it up. And guys, I love throuples. I really love throuples. Unfortunately, the throuple in this one is between 2 adults and a minor, which is not the greatest, and that's one of the ways in which Delany's work has aged really poorly. That's something that's in pretty much every one of his works, and it's in Nivarion as well, which again is why I recommend reading that one first as like a here's what you're getting yourself into sort of thing. But it's such a weird situation that everybody in this city is in, and multiple times like other people in like the gang they're in call the kid out, like him and Lanya, his girlfriend, for like being in a relationship with this kid and this 15-year-old. And like, it's not meant to be something that is like an okay thing to do, at least within the context of the story. Like, other people are like, that's weird, bro. So and it is not like a happy ending for them by any means. So that's why, like, I'm personally okay with it, with seeing it portrayed in the story in this way. I can understand why other people might not want to read about that at all. I get it, I really do. It's kind of like Fledgling by Octavia Butler for me, where like it is purposeful within the story and I see why it was done, but I can understand why other people are just so viscerally put off by it that they just might not want to read the book at all. So do be warned going into this book that that is something that happens. But the throuple is also just so interesting, and the dynamic between the three of the characters and the ways in which that they push and pull, and all three need each other and don't need each other, and the sort of interdynamics within that relationship and how they all work together, and like the relationship doesn't work without the three of them. Like, it's just the kid and Lanya earlier on in the book, and they are constantly like splitting up and misinterpreting each other and miscommunicating with each other and like not really being together until Denny comes into the picture, and that's when they're able to sort of form like a unit together because they all give each other something that they need. And Lanya is like a queen, explicitly in this relationship because she thinks it's hot for two guys to be in a relationship, so kind of a Fujoshi queen there. But she's also just a great character, and the ways in which, again, her story is explored throughout the story, and the ways in which she has her own things as a woman that the kid just can't understand and then is constantly like putting his foot in his mouth in. Really liked it. There are all these weird things happening, and I have formed my own theories about why those things are happening and what is really going on in this book, but you're never gonna know for sure. And the book even like sort of lampshades the fact that this might be uncomfortable and might be kind of a letdown for people. Later on in the book, the kid is narrating. He says, "My life here more and more resembles a book whose opening chapters, whose title even, suggest mysteries to be solved only at closing. But as one reads along, one becomes more and more suspicious that the author has lost the thread of his argument, that the questions will never be resolved, or more upsetting, that the position of the characters will have so changed by the book's end that the answers to the initial questions have become trivial." And it's true, like by the time you get to the end of the book, it has changed so fundamentally, and the kid has changed so fundamentally that sort of the questions you had at the beginning of the book, what is the orchid? Like, what is, you know, the two moons? Like, how did he come to the city and why doesn't he remember his name? That's kind of pointless by the end of the book. Like, you're just kind of so focused on how is he gonna get out of this situation and like what is going on in the city right now that those questions kind of become irrelevant. And I can see, again, being disappointed that you never get an answer to those questions, but also I think there, again, it's just so much to interpret. It's not a book that tells you that there is a clear answer for you to find that is revealed to you by the end of the book, but it's a book that you can interpret and engage with. And I think that that is what I really like about it, and what makes it, again, feel so like Ulysses to me, that there are all of these things that you can talk about this book forever. And that's why I think this is like one of his best-selling books and one of his most well-known books, because there's just so much to it. You could talk about it forever and like never really come to a conclusion. You and another person have a totally different idea of what a small bit of this book means and how important that part is to the rest of the book. So personally, I absolutely loved this. Again, it's 800 pages and I flew through it, and I never felt like there was a dull moment, even though, again, much of the book is very slice of lifey, but I just really loved this. And again, I recommend this to a very specific kind of person. I recommend this to people if you like Always Coming Home by Ursula K. Le Guin, if you like The Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe, if you like Samuel Delany already, you have already read his stuff and you know you like him, that is who I recommend this book to. And everybody else, don't read it because you're not gonna like it, okay? I'm just warning you, you're gonna read this book and be like, this bitch is crazy, like, what is she talking about? So there is Dahlgren by Samuel Delany. Yeah, my favorite interaction between anyone in this book is probably near the end, when the kid and Lanya are talking about how they have moved, and "We were a lot cleaner there," Kid said, "maybe because there were a few more girls around. Male chauvinist pig," Lanya said dryly. "Import a lot of slave labor to wash the dishes, and..." "I'm not a male chauvinist pig," Kid said. "I'm a commie pervert." There's nothing to stop you from being both. So that's just a marker of like the charm that this book has and sort of the themes that this book has. So that exchange, I think, really shows a lot about Dahlgren by Samuel Delany and why I love it so much. So she sits on the shelf right by House of Leaves by Mark C. Danielewski, because I keep my books in alphabetical order, and I think that's very fitting. Okay, I also read Arrow's Fall by Mercedes Lackey, which is the last book in the first Valdemar series in her Valdemar world. And it was a very similar experience to reading the last Herald Mage series, which I read like last year probably, where like the first 2 books in the series I thought were really good and like had a really good balance of like light and fluffy and dark and grim. And then the last book in the series just becomes like a traumatic sexual assault fest for no reason. And even putting that aside, like there were just so many decisions made in this last book in the series that I just didn't think made any sense. The relationship especially, like there's only so many times, she really likes to do this too, she did this in the last Herald Mage too, where like there is this really great relationship built up, and then we swerve and go to a different relationship that has 0 build up and is only sort of validated through the idea that they have this magical soul bond tie. And it's like, you can tell me all you want that these characters have this innate love tie, but if I don't see that on page, if they're apart for the entirety of the book and they never interact, and when they do interact it's like them miscommunicating and not having a good relationship, how am I supposed to believe that? You know, like it just, I really didn't like the romance in this one, and found that the choice to kill off another character was just like misguided, I think, and cut off a lot of really interesting, like again, character development between the 3 of them. Of course, I am a throuple fiend, so like maybe other people will feel differently, but yeah, so needless to say, I didn't really like that one, and it has made me really think that like maybe Mercedes Lackey just like can't end trilogies. Should I read another one in the Voldemort series and see if that is like truly a recurring theme? Because like 2 is a coincidence, but it doesn't make a pattern, so maybe I'll continue. I also read my one Melissa Scott book a month that I have to always read or else I die. I read A Death at the Dionysus Club by her and Amy Griswold. This is like their collaboration series, which is set in sort of like a Edwardian London steampunky era where they have like alchemy, and the main characters are like sort of school friends who reunite as adults and fall in love. And one of them is like an alchemist that the police department sort of consult with, and one of them is like sort of friends with people of iller repute. He is sort of like in the underground. He doesn't really do anything illegal himself, but he like engages with people who do illegal stuff, and he is also like an alchemist guy, does metaphysics and stuff like that. So the first book is really fun. I think it's called Death by Silver. Yes, that's what it's called. And it sort of sets up the stakes and them getting together. And the second book I also thought was really fun. They are together, but like it's sort of them trying to develop that relationship into something deeper and like be like, no, like I actually like you, I don't want to just be a fling. And so I really appreciated that. I know some people find established relationships boring. I think they can be boring, but there's also a way to make them really fun and interesting, especially if we saw them get together in the first book. So I found them really fun, and the mystery in this one was also really interesting, and it gets a lot more fantastical in this one. Like the first one is very grounded in reality with just a little bit of those like alchemical elements, and this one is like we're dealing with a lot of alchemy and a lot of like fantasy elements. There's this cool stuff that's like liminal places basically, which it felt very relevant reading this book and seeing all the Backrooms promo, so that was fun, and I really appreciated the way it ended, and I wish that they had written more books in this series because they never wrote any more, but I think it could have been a really fun like just mystery series to keep going with. But it also feels like a very like a good place to end and be like, well, they're fine, they got what they wanted, they're in a relationship now. So that was very fun. I enjoyed reading that one. I'm running out of Melissa Scott books to read, so I'm scared. I also read The Fisherman by John Langan, which is sort of like a cosmic horror book that people really highly recommend. I read this one for the older protagonist Square on Fantasy Bingo, and unfortunately I didn't really like this one at all. I thought I would love this because I do really like a good like cosmic horror and find it really scary. And the premise sounded really interesting. It says it's about these 2 widowed fishermen who bond over fishing, but then sort of start to learn about this mystical figure called the Fisherman and his origins and how he came and like what he wants from them as they learn more about him. Unfortunately, that's low-key not what the story's about. It's way more about this extended flashback within the story about these immigrant families who came to America and how they discovered that this guy moved to town and he was practicing sorcery, and they somehow also actually knew sorcery from Germany, and figure out what he's doing and the kind of shenanigans he's up to and stop him. And then very briefly at the end we go back to those widowers and get this like a very irrational feeling scene where one of them, you know, turns on the other to sort of sacrifice them to this dark god, and the other one's like, it felt so bad because he's my best friend. And it's like, you guys have known each other for a couple months at this point, and you've gone fishing like twice, and the audience only saw you be friends for like 5 pages. So I don't really feel that bad about him attacking you. So yeah, the prose of this was, I think, why I didn't like it. It's very dense monologuing prose, and I just didn't particularly love it. And then I just wasn't as interested in the flashbacks. It just wasn't paced very well, I don't think. It's just a lot of like, weird stuff is happening. Oh no, what do we do? Don't worry guys, I know exactly what to do because I've had this knowledge hidden from you guys that I didn't tell you I had all these abilities about until right now when it became important. So didn't love that one. Maybe I should read some Lovecraft because I really do like cosmic horror, but like, okay, I got an arc of A.K. Larkwood's new book, The Seventh Banisher. Now I love A.K. Larkwood's duology, The Thousand Eyes, The Thousand Gates duology. I don't remember what it's called. It's The Unspoken Name and the sequel, which I loved when I read them. I read the first one in January for kind of my reading romantasy / using novelist plus vlog, which I had such a good time with, and I really liked that book when I found it then. I read the sequel and really liked it too. So I was so excited when I went on NetGalley and saw that A.K. Larkwood had a new book coming out. I trust A.K. Larkwood. So I went into this book with really high expectations, and unfortunately those expectations were just not met. This one was just fine. I just think it was such a big step down from The Unspoken Name. Like, okay, what A.K. Larkwood is really good at? World building. The world building in this book is really interesting, and there's all these hints of like really cool stuff. Like, it's very, very subtly foreshadowed that they live in like this post-apocalyptic world, and that like the castle they're going to is actually like a nuclear waste facility. So like I loved all those little hints, but also nothing is ever confirmed, so it keeps this very like fantastical feel to it. It doesn't just feel like a sci-fi book or a book about nuclear waste. Like, it still feels like a fantasy book with magic. Unfortunately, this book, the majority of this book takes place in like fake Victorian England. Like, it's just sort of Victorian England with like these hints that there's all these ghosts in the water, you know? And for the majority of the book, they're in this very isolated castle, so we don't even really see that much about their society and how it functions anyways. It's a very isolated, sort of unusual setting that they're in. It's not the normal world that they live in. So we don't really actually learn a lot about the normal world and how it functions and how it's different from our world. So I was kind of, the world building was still very interesting, but I just know A.K. Larkwood can do so much better because I loved the world in The Unspoken Name, and it felt very grand and very well thought out. I really did like the characters. A.K. Larkwood is also really good at characters and really good at weird, complicated, nuanced characters who are always doing the wrong thing. You want to slap them upside the head, but that you also just really care about and feel that they're trying their best. I felt that way about the main character of this book, and how she is just trying so hard but always making these really bad decisions, and she's kind of unpleasant to be around, but I love her. And all of the characters on the island who are sort of being chased down too, it could have been very easy to make them all just like stock one-note characters, but it felt like by the end I could pick all of them out of a crowd. I don't remember any of their names because I'm bad with names, but like they had very clear defined roles in the story, but also sort of developed beyond those roles as the story went on. Where this book lost me was the plot. It's again a mystery plot, sort of an and then there were none type plot, where they're on this island, people are picking them off, someone is picking them off one by one, and they are trying to figure out who done it. I'm just not that interested in that kind of plot to begin with, but also I just didn't think that this was very well done. By the end of the book, there were so many inconsistencies and so many plot holes and character inconsistencies and just things that didn't make sense or that didn't feel realistic for the characters. Like, there's this one part where the main character and this other girl are working together at this point, and this other girl tells her, this is the person who's murdering us. And then 5 pages later, the main character goes, it's not safe to be running around the island alone. We still don't know who the killer is. It's like, she just told you who the killer is. And even if like you don't believe her, why is that not how that's phrased? Like, why isn't it like, you know, I know so-and-so told me that so-and-so is the killer, but it could be anyone still. I don't know if I trust her. But instead it's like, no, it's dangerous to run around because we don't know anything still. And it's like, you do though, but you do. So it's just stuff like that where it's like, it wasn't the best crafted mystery. I just don't think that's really A.K. Larkwood's strong suit. I think what they really excel at is, again, very character focused stories, because that's what The Unspoken Name was, and I thought that was really excellent. But like, this one is a lot plottier, and so I felt like it wasn't as good a story. Also, it has a very present narrator who's narrating to the audience, and there are footnotes, and there's sort of this sort of twist that happens like 30% of the way through, where you realize that who this is telling the story and how they're actually functioning within the story is different than you think it is, and just the book kind of didn't earn that to me. First of all, the twist just sort of adds nothing, and is, again, the character who's supposed to be pretending to be another character is acting so different in the first share of the book so that you don't guess it right away, that it might as well have been a completely different character in the first place. And then the story never really earned the footnotes, because the footnotes are just like adding little bits of world building information or are adding snarky little asides. But the problem is that the normal narration also does that. In the normal narration, there are also world building tidbits and snarky jokes. So it's like, why were those things specifically chosen to be footnotes? It just isn't consistent. And that's something that I need when it comes to footnotes and like weird writing stuff. I love it, but I need it to be consistent and I need it to feel purposeful. And this just didn't feel consistent or purposeful. So I'm so sad to say this, because again, I love The Unspoken Name and I love A.K. Larkwood, but like, this one was a step down for me. I think if you like mysteries more, then maybe you'll like this more than I did, but this was just not it for me. I also read Volatile Memory by Seth Haddon. This is a little sci-fi novella that I loved. This is what I wanted Hell's Art to be. It is a fun, fast-paced sci-fi romp through outer space. It is centering around these two women. One is this trans woman, Willa, who has like broken away from these corporations that rule the galaxy to be herself and be her authentic self. And one woman, a cis woman, God, I don't remember her name, but whatever. What is it? It's Sibel, something like that. And she has been sort of killed by her husband and trapped in this mask, and these masks are like part of society, and everybody wears them. They're like electronic masks that like can do stuff, like a, you know, visor basically. And so her consciousness is in the mask, and so it's about them bonding and falling in love a little bit, and what both of their experiences with gender are like, and how gender is different for different people, and how for some people it is located so heavily in the body, and how some people it is not at all. Like, it was just so good. I love the themes around autonomy and the themes around gender and what it means to be a woman and how you become a woman, and also just it was just so fun. I loved this. Trans lesbian space criminals, very fun. I really like this one. I'm definitely gonna read the sequel in this duology sometime soon. I also read The Unicorn Hunters by Catherine Arden. I have read The Bear and the Nightingale. I never finished the series for no particular reason. Like, I'm sure I would like it if I finished it, and I do want to finish it at some point, but I read The Unicorn Hunter, and I thought that this had very wonderful prose that was like rich and descriptive without going overboard into purple. It had a very interesting and well thought out folkloric feeling fantasy world. It had really interesting ideas and a really interesting sort of, again, folkloric inspiration. Unfortunately, I did just feel like there was something missing from the story. Like, a lot of the character and plot development and relationship development happened off page. There was a part late in the book where the main character Anne and her lover Louis are talking about the fact that they're having an affair. They're both technically married to other people, and they're talking about the fact that they don't want her half-brother Henry and her maid Madeline to find out. And Louis goes, oh, it's okay if they find out because they're in love too, so they'll be sympathetic to us. And I'm like, they're in love with each other? Like, since when? Have they ever been mentioned to be on page together? Like, at this point, their names hadn't even come up on the same page, much less been mentioned that they were falling in love in the background of this book. And then that never comes up again throughout the rest of the story. And Madeline doesn't appear in the rest of the story at all, and Henry is very minimal in the rest of the story. So it's like, why even introduce this tidbit to begin with? But whatever. I am aware of, like, the fact that the Fairyloot edition of this book has 80 extra pages and is like the author's preferred version of the book, which, to be frank, like, puts me off of Catherine Arden a little bit. Like, I just think that's kind of a scummy move to have your publishers be like, you got to cut this out, we're not publishing this, and then to go around and sell it to an exclusive subscription box, as opposed to like putting it out there or just like, you know, equal access, you know, like, she's allowed to do what she wants with her work, but I just find it a little bit scummy. So yeah, mixed bag with that one. Again, I do really want to finish the Bear and the Nightingale series now. I know it's called something else, but I don't remember, so don't ask me to name that series. I also read The Exile Waiting by Vonda McIntyre, which I read Dream Snake by her, and this is sort of vaguely a companion novel to it. They're very different in some ways, and like, it's clear that maybe she didn't know that they were going to be related when she wrote them, because there are certain details that are just very fundamentally different about like the city in both of them, but they're a little bit connected. Whereas Dream Snake is about the lives of the people like outside of the last city on this ruined earth, and they think that everybody inside is like living in this technological paradise. The Exile Waiting is like about the people inside the center and how it actually is this very brutal, poor life. There are these rich families, and then everyone else is like just waiting to die, basically. And the main character gets involved is a thief, and she gets involved with these sort of foreign interlopers who fly in because she is trying to save her brother, who is like, they both have like telepathic abilities, and her brother is like tormented by his and like turns to drugs to like try to suppress that. So at its core, it's a story about power and autonomy and slavery and poverty, and like for its time and for what it is, it's like a stunningly progressive like exploration of those things and why those things are so bad. But it does sort of backslide into that mindset that's like, poverty is bad and slavery is bad, because what if like somebody really smart is trapped in poverty, is trapped in slavery? And it's like, I don't know if that's the case. I think that maybe it's just a bad thing, period. But overall, pretty just interesting philosophical and intellectual ideas here. The reason why I rated it kind of midly, I rated like a 3.75, is because the villain is just such a stock character, and I wanted him to be more complex and be integrated into the story more. But overall, I did really like this one, and I want to read more from Fonda McIntyre now, so if anybody has any recommendations, I'll take them. And then I read The Daughter's War by Christopher Buehlman. This is the prequel to The Black Tongue Thief, which I really didn't like. I read it last month and I gave it like a 2.5, and I just really didn't find it funny. It's a very comedic, grimdark book that I did not enjoy, but this one is a prequel about a different character, narrated by a different character, and I really liked this character in The Black Tongue Thief, so I was like, maybe I'll really enjoy this. And The Black Tongue Thief was so bad for me. Like, it's objectively a fine book. It just wasn't for me. And I hated it so much that I got this book like at the beginning of July, and I didn't start reading it until like 4 days ago because I was just so scared. I was like, I really don't like the first one. But when I started reading this, I just couldn't put it down. I loved this. I thought it was so fun. I gave this a 4.25. It's about Galva, who is like a side character in the first book, and she is this awesome knight lady serving the goddess of death, and just this is her origin story and how she got involved in this all-female battalion in the army, and how she has this very complicated relationship with her family, her 3 brothers, and her dad. She is like a duke's daughter, but she's very masculine, and she's a lesbian, and so it's all about how that complicates her relationship with her brothers and her family, and her sort of falling in love with the queen that she's in love with in the first book, and how they met and how they got together, and then also how she became like an how the hell do I say this word? How she began to worship the death goddess and get involved in that, and how she first got into battling the goblins. So I just loved all those things. I found her such a more complicated and likable and sympathetic character than I found Kinch, I think is his name, from the first book. It's a lot more serious of a book. There are still funny elements in it to sort of lighten the tension, because it's a very dark book. It's about this brutal war they're having with the goblins. Galva's a very sort of serious, stoic person, so there are these little jokes here and there, but it's more like situational humor, or again, like people very purposefully trying to lighten the mood, as opposed to constant jokey Marvel quips, go, 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 like The Black Tongue Thief was. And I really love the sort of world building in this. I love how you can just tell Christopher Buehlman is really interested in actually coming up with ways that like goblins could kill humans and be such like a superior force, even despite the fact that they're like, you know, just punt the thing, like kick the thing away from you. But like, you never doubt in this book that they are like soundly defeating the humans because of their tactics and the things that he has invented for them to do. And they genuinely felt very scary and genuinely felt very threatening. And then also Galva feels genuinely very badass for figuring out ways to get around that and the things that she endures. Just like this, I just had a really fun time with this. On the spectrum of Between Two Fires to The Black Tongue Thief, this is definitely somewhere in the middle. It's not quite as dark and horror filled as Between Two Fires, but it's definitely a lot more serious and a lot more up my alley than The Black Tongue Thief. So if you are also in the same boat where you read The Black Tongue Thief and you didn't really enjoy it, or you heard me talk about it and think you would not like it, I do recommend giving this one a try either way, because I thought this was leagues better, way more up my alley, and I enjoyed it a lot. I read the first 3 books in the Fablehaven series. This is a children's fantasy series. The first book is Fablehaven, and then Rise of the Evening Star, and then Grip of the Shadow Plague. And I reread them because I really loved this series as a child, and Brandon Mull was coming to my mom's library, and so I did go and get my book signed by Brandon Mull. Again, this series was just very important to me as a child. I loved this series as a kid, so I just really wanted to go and get my very old edition of Keys to the Demon Prison signed. I had to pull this out of my childhood bedroom closet, but I'm glad I have that signed. It was great to see him talk and meet him, and very fun experience. I'm glad my mom told me he was coming to our library. And I reread the first 3 books in the series so that I, was prepared, because it had been a long time. I had reread them, I think, in high school, but I'm old, so that was like 10 years ago at this point. But I actually still really enjoyed them. I think they're like very charming kids books that I think adults can still enjoy. I mean, like, obviously I wouldn't really go into this expecting like high literature, but like for kids books I really enjoyed them. Even as an adult, I just found the imagination, the ideas super charming and super interesting. And then the relationship between Kendra and Seth probably is like my favorite part of this series. The sibling bond just feels so real between them, the banter that they have, but also how they clearly love each other and like would do anything for each other. It just feels very realistic. The way they banter feels very realistic. It's genuinely funny at certain points. I, you know, chuckled at certain things that they were saying to each other, jokes that they were making, and they give it both ways. It's not just like, you know, perfect Kendra and fun, interesting Seth. Like, they both get stuff to do, and Kendra gets to be this like magical fairy princess, and Seth is just like a 12-year-old boy. So that's feminism. But yeah, I definitely want to finish rereading the series. I just couldn't because someone else had the ebook at the library, and I'm like, I'm not stealing this ebook from an actual child who probably is reading this series for the first time. But they are done with it, so now I'm going to finish reading Keys to the Dragon Sanctuary and Secrets of the Dragon Sanctuary, something like that, and Keys to the Demon Prison. So I do remember these being so exciting and there being so many betrayals and double crossings. So I do remember one twist that is coming up that even knowing it's happening, I know I'm gonna be so gagged when it's revealed. Like, and apparently I didn't know this because I, you know, totally aged out of these books. I haven't thought about them in years, but there is a sequel series to Fablehaven that is basically, is what he said, it's Fablehaven like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, where it's them going to the dragon sanctuaries too. So low-key, I might read those for the first time. I might do it. I really do love Kendra and Seth. Those are like, it's crazy because they were like my peers at the time I read this book, and now they're like my children. So that was fun to reread those books. So that is about all the books I want to talk about, I think. Yeah, I think I'm all done. So I, again, am almost done reading the shortlist for the Ursula K. Le Guin Prize for Fiction. I am going to definitely make a video talking about those books when I'm done with them. I also have finished the Fantasy Bingo Challenge, and I've also finished the Female Gaze Challenge, Spring Summer Challenge. So I do also kind of want to make videos about those sometime soon. So I just have to find the free time to film them. So thank you so much for watching this video, and tell me about your July reading. Have you read any of these books? If so, what do you think about them? How was your reading month in July? So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.